Vortex here, and obviously with a Blon comparison, as it says from the title. So I thought I'd do a kind of comparison, because the BL-05S, the green one, has only kind of recently been released, and I've recently reviewed it. It's not a bad one. It's kind of different. They're all a bit different. I included the Cardinals, even though you can't technically buy these new unless you're really lucky. These are for the used market, essentially. Obviously the 03, the 05 and the 05S, these are in age of when they came out. I'm not sure the exact release date of the Cardinal, but it's got to be at least 2 years, 3 years maybe, along with the Blue Jay, which are extremely rare to get. If you ever find a blue one, keep it. But anyway, let's get into comfort, shall we say. Best comfort out of all of these, the Cardinals. They've got an awesome shape, but one thing that does let them down is that's the vent for the dynamic. If it's ever windy, the air goes in there and it's really loud, the wind noise. But for comfort wise, I think these are the best. Now the 03s for comfort, it's very hit and miss. They either fit you well, they're kind of a shallow fit, or they don't fit you well at all. For me, it's fine. I'm quite lucky with the shallow fit. They tend to be the best with aftermarket cables, because the stock cables don't work for me, and they don't work for a lot of people. And then the 05 and the 05S, basically the same shape, but the 05S is an ever so slightly, you probably won't be able to tell, but it's ever so slightly thicker. You won't be able to tell. Just about there. It's actually slightly thicker, but the comfort for those two are the same. So yeah, Cardinal wins the best. 03 is either hit or miss, and these two are basically the same, even though the 05S is slightly thicker. I mean, ever so slightly. Apart from that, they're identical. All these come with the same kind of tips. Same cable. The cable fits better on the newer ones. This is the only one that uses MMCX cable, and it does come with quite a nice cable, which is this one. Looks kind of pink. As a factory cable, very nice and soft. But that's if you can find a used pair like I did back in January of 2020. So it's been around 9 months since I've had those. Yeah, start messing around to get to sound. They're kind of in two groups, because obviously they're close, and they're over there. If you like really bassy soundstage fun, the Cardinals are the best. But if you go from like that to like the 05S, they lack so much detail compared to those. They sound kind of bloated. Like the 03, still probably out of these, obviously the easiest to source, and they're probably the cheapest, around £20. If you want to want good fun earphone, these are still good fun ones. These aren't fun in my opinion. Obviously plus fitment issues. The negatives with these compared to the newer ones, I say, is the low end is a bit bloated, it's a bit much. I like that. Don't mind that. It's not up to me. It just depends on what you use them for. If you use them for music, for gaming off your phone, or whatever. But those two are the most bassiest out of the pair. It's a bit much. It could do a little bit better control, but that's where these come in to try and fix that. It's probably the best way to put it. This one has the least amount of bass, and the 05S has slightly more bass. Slightly mid bass, that's what I mean. These are like sub bass monsters. If you like that, they can do that quite well. And so do the 03s. The 05s are a little bit lower on the low end. They're a bit leaner, which is good or bad. It depends if you're a bass head or not. Depends on your use case as well. Mids, this probably is the least, the Cardinals. Out of all these, probably got the less mids. The 05 is the most, which is what a lot of people don't like. When they went from that to that, all that people wanted from the 03, the Mark II that was meant to be released, was clean the low end up a little bit. No more upper mids, just keep it as it is, and probably a little bit more detail, and kind of needs to refinement. But they went from that to that, and that's not what people wanted. This is probably, out of this selection, is the one I wouldn't pick, which is the BL-05s. I do like the colour, the gunmetal colour, or silver as well. But yeah, these do have the most upper mids, well, most mids, 4 of those. And they are just behind. These are kind of close. Yeah, Treble 05S has the most, just about, compared to that. I still like the 03, considering it's been out for maybe a year and a bit. And I was one of the earlier ones who found it on AliExpress and took a chance. I still like the 03 for £20. It's still great, but it's got flaws. They're all flawed, essentially. But it just depends on, your point of view. The 05S for me is probably the best for details, with that behind, and that. And then the Cardinals. Cardinals, in comparison to these, they do lack so much detail compared to the newer ones. But they are, for any big action film, these things are awesome. If you like Michael Bay films or anything big, the Cardinals are probably the best. If you want to use it for films. So yeah, Treble 05S has the most. It's not these. None of these are piercing. Essentially, they're not like that. They're not like a TRN VX. None of these are like that. And obviously, all of these are single dynamic drivers. So they're all carbon nanotube. Obviously, though, those two are the closest. When they went from that to that, it's a bit of a change, and then pair are quite close, the 05 and the 05S. The 05S is only available in that colour, and this colour was only originally available for the hybrid, which had the piezo driver, which they pulled because it was a bit too peaky in the upper treble, so they pulled her. That was originally going to be of that colour. But yeah, so comfort, isolation, Cardinal's probably the best, apart from which it's wind noise, which causes a problem because there's the actual vent. But still the best design. It's a shame they really should bring the Cardinals back, and the Blue Jays, the blue ones. Just refine it, just clean it up a bit, and then they'd be awesome. It's such a nice shell. The Blon audition. So out of these, the ones I would not pick is the 05s. They have the least mid bass, and they have the most upper mids, which is what you don't want, because you didn't want any more than the 03s, essentially. The 03s did a lot of things right. They did have a few flaws, but they did a lot of things right. And to the average consumer, the 03s are still good, apart from fitment. And these pair are better at fitment, and obviously including that. Overall sound between these two, 03 has more mid bass. Obviously, it's easy to tell. This is less, the 05S, but it's more cleaner, it's more controlled. It doesn't bleed into the lower mids like this does a little bit. Upper mids, this is slightly more than that, a little bit. It's within tolerance, is probably the best way to say. And one thing I noticed high up into the treble region is this does slight micro details so much better. It's a bright earphone compared to that, but it's not excessive or anything like that. And it seems like the driver's faster, so in any complex music sections or if there's a lot going on, this does a better job at separation than the 03. That's probably one of its flaws, and this kind of fixes it. But these aren't fun sounding. The kind of lean sounding is probably the best way to put it. Everything's very clear, very detailed with the 05S. Going straight back to the 03, it's I wouldn't say muddy, but it's just not as clear as the 05s S. And yeah, the two kings, they really should bring back the Cardinals, like I said. Bring it back, make it a 2-pin, and just refine it, just a refinement, and that will sell a lot. If you could sell these for maybe, because these are around £35, I think, on AliExpress when I last checked, and these are at least 50 to 60. But if they charge maybe 40, £45 with the same kind of shell with a much cleaner presentation, they would sell thousands of those. They need to do that. So Blon, if you're watching, fix it. So yeah, 03 in 2020, is it still worth buying? Yes. They are flawed, they are fun sounding, and that's why you listen to music, for fun, you know, for a bit of excitement. These are overall, these are leaner, more detailed. For most people, there will be a better fitment. Plus the stock cable fits and you can actually use it because of how it comes out of your ear. These are both the right one. So how the cable would fit around. It's better on the 05S and the 05, which is there, compared to the 03. I like having both. In reality, you shouldn't have to have both, but because they're kind of different, they both got strengths and weaknesses, essentially. I'd skip the 05s because the S fixes that kind of downfall. This is superior to that. This is meant to be a 3rd gen driver, and that's a 2nd driver. Slightly harder to power. They both need clean enough sources, but I think the 05S, you probably benefit a touch more. So, summarise these: 03, more fun sounding. Very simple design. Look, it's like a blob. It's just a blob. I like both equally. I've been using these a lot since after I did the review, and I like them both. They're both, you know, they're both different. They both do a different job. These are the more refined pair. Those at the 03s are the more fun sounding. Anything with a lot of low end, obviously that's better. Well, more fun. This is just has less but more controlled. So yeah, I think that's it. I don't want to stretch the video out too much, but I think yeah, Cardinals are probably not as good as the 05S. If I had a refinement, they would be really good. They need to do that. But yeah, 03s, I still think they're good in 2020. Obviously, these have only been out for maybe a month, 4 weeks, 5 weeks since this video, so it's not been that long. I'd like to see what Blon do next. I'd be quite interested to see how they go from this, whether if they use the same shell, different shell, if they ever make the 03 Mark II, if it ever happens, because they're meant to have a slightly longer nozzle, maybe different tips, I don't know, maybe a better cable, I don't know. And I think that's it. Good stage, good imaging. Imaging's probably a bit better on this one because it seems like the driver as well is faster. It's hard to describe, but if you listen to anything with complex music or there's a lot happening, this does a better job. And yeah, anything you want to know, just as usual, let me know in the comments. But I like them both equally. They're both different. You know, if you like one thing, you can pick one. If you like more things the other, you can pick the other. They're both kind of cheap, £20 still, which is still really good. Around 35 for this, I think, which is, you know, for how it performs is a good price. I can't really fault £35 for, you know, for how it performs. I like to see how this performs in more expensive single dynamic drivers. Like I like to try the Elbaso IT00. I think that probably outclass it, but it's again £60, £70, so twice the price. And I think that's it. But yeah, all good. Recommendations, both of these. but they're both different. I don't recommend the 05s anymore because this is out. This fixes all of that. They are not any better. They are, my opinion, they are inferior to that every way. My opinion. Just how they sound is too dry, too sharp, the upper mids, not enough low end. And that fixes all of those a little bit. And yeah, thanks for watching. Blon, all the upper T and Dreams all in one place. And let the music burn. Yeah, thanks for watching, and take care, and stay safe out there.